Whoosh! Pow! Swoop! Bam! Holy smokes. We're talking about comics today on Behind the Curve.
We swear we've been like on track and working. We just like to do that stuff in our spare time.
Whoosh! Pow! Bam! Blap!
Wongo.
Wongo. My favorite of the onomatopoeia words is officially Wongo. So comics. What brought us? What brought us to this crossroads? Oh, and I'm throwing things.
Definitely free time again for
Yep.
the most part. Uh, Literacy. Um, Maybe some fox girls, cat girls. Well, for one of us anyway.
All right. So we have so today's topic is a little bit more broad than that. It's comics, graphic novels, and manga. Sort of the three of those things, or manga for some people out there. Y'all can argue about it later. I don't particularly care. I
We
as
have a
a,
comment section for a reason.
if you don't like how I pronounce it, no, well, you don't like how he pronounces it. I don't know. I have no
Yeah.
idea. So we're talking about those sort of three things, and well, we kind of left it very open ended.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, Matt, this was an idea that you brought up. So I'd be very interested to see sort of like partially why you picked it, and also sort of your background, like the background going into this.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest comic fan in the world, or at least I actually used to be less so. I had an uncle who started me kind of by like donating his old Garfield strip collections, which actually kind of turned me on to the idea of comics. I didn't know that their collections were a thing. I remember even going to Borders. Like, I assume you know what Borders is,
If somebody doesn't know what Borders is, that's just sad.
right? That's true. I kind of like Borders more than Barnes and Nobles.
Oh, well, I love Borders. I tell you, the yeah, no, definitely.
I used to go to the new one near like the Target near my house. I don't know. It's like a guitar center or something now.
No, the Guitar Center is still next door.
Oh, okay. Well, it used to be. I don't know. Maybe an
It's
Avalon now. I
yeah,
forget.
yeah, no, it's an Avalon flooring. All that space that we could fill with books were wasted with tacky tile.
Yeah, they traded Shakespeare for linoleum. I can't pronounce it, so
Close
it's
enough.
boring.
Oh,
But yeah, I started with that. I think far back I can remember. I also read the Sonic comics from Archie Comics back when they were a thing.
okay.
I am, for the record, not a Sonic fan because it's one of the things that you don't admit, even if you did like Sonic as a child.
I
Um,
never liked Sonic as a child, which probably makes me a strange outlier.
mm, Also, more strange the fact of how your interests developed into, but that's a story
Yes,
for another time.
yes, it is. But yes, that is something that I've never been into.
Yeah,
I don't know
but
why.
yeah, and the funny thing is that that didn't really turn me into comics. What that turned me on to is actually to, even though it might have actually sort of preceded that I played Sonic and on vacation, actually in Chincoteague, Virginia, and
Okay,
then went to the comics. But it turned me on to, if anything, animation because
really.
I got, yeah, or well, maybe more Sonic as a greater franchise. I would say that there was a story, and I thought the comics reflected the video games, and I found it figured out they didn't. But I wasn't mad, and that was kind of, I didn't go much into comics after that because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I wasn't allowed to read a lot as a kid in terms of comics because a lot of it was inappropriate. And then later in my life, I discovered J.G. Keeley,
Yes.
and he kind of I discovered that along with his recommended readings in fantasy, he also had recommended readings in comics.
Yeah.
Um, It's actually funny, like how he defines comics. He insists on the word comics because I personally lump comics, graphic novels, and manga in the same category because it's kind of more like the grand category of stories that tell themselves in the form which are pictures, sometimes using language. Because
Yes.
we all know if Jenny Tark Tikaovsky, the guy who did Samurai Jack, did comics. So probably won't you could go an entire issue without dialogue and
Yeah.
still use pictures. So graphic novels, comics, same thing, obviously, in the Western sense of the world. According to J.G. Keeley, apparently calling it a graphic novel was more of a marketing trick during the time of the Comics Code Authority because they kind of censored stuff and they were like non periodicals or something. But anyway, they made things more mature. And as for manga, it's just like the Eastern version. I don't know if there was much of a thing before the American occupation, but definitely, there's Western inspiration there. I think that's significant. And there's the same thing categorically too.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree. It's sort of like when you're talking about fiction. Well, you have to break it up into pulp fiction and realistic fiction.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about fiction. We're talking
Yeah.
about we're talking about I don't know what I'd call it. Fully illustrated stories.
Yeah.
I
I mean, I guess some paintings, like a series of paintings that someone made in their lifetime that like were about the same subject, could also be like a very early form of comics. I guess like hieroglyphics might be too, but that's more of a language. But like
hieroglyphics.
the
I don't
ambiguity
know.
actually interests me than anything. Honestly, I think it's like an interesting idea.
It is an interesting idea. Yeah, no, comics are interesting because you have sort of I think actually weirdly enough, Bill Watterson did a Calvin and Hobbes comic about this. Is comics and sort of the tension between high art, what we think of as high art and low art. It's Calvin and Hobbes comic. I don't know. Somebody out there probably knows the one I'm referring to. That's the one where they're talking where Calvin and Hobbes are talking about the sort of paintings versus drawings versus satire versus comics, high art versus low art versus high art versus low art.
Yeah, Calvin and Hobbes try to do everything basically. So when they, I mean, it stopped, right? Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely not one of the longer running comic series.
Okay, that makes sense. Wait, can you still hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, because it made a funny sound. Um, yeah, I think my attraction, just before I get into like what I like specific comics that I like and all that, like I think what I like about comics as much is that I think that comics actually represents fiction as its freest expression. Not necessarily that it has always in the past or has reached its zenith, even in a single work. But I think that's because you can basically draw virtually anything in a panel. It doesn't take forever or a whole team to make it, like animation, which is a really the concept, or be rendered possible or insanely expensive in a live action filming with like a lot of studio CGI money.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree with that. To some extent, I think comics are. I find it interesting though that comics are often the freest form of expression, but I would also argue that comics are often the biggest slaves to the genre in which they set themselves.
Which is really ironic if you think about it.
It is. It's how postmodern is that? It's you have the most freedom of. Actually, that's actually kind of a lot like. It's like we have more freedom and opportunity than any other group of people. Yet we still choose to do. We still choose to have arbitrary limits.
Yeah, and you see that it's not just censorship because in the East, with just Hong Kong comics, manga, like even with the lack of censorship, like and I guess like it's a different thing there because they're more of a collectivist society and they try to have like, even though they try to have feature artists, they do try to like sell stuff even as something as cheap as like a manga. So things don't like
Yeah,
go very far if they're original. I guess is what I'm saying.
yeah. I think that's why. Much as I hate to say it, have you ever noticed how probably about 80% of animes are pretty much exactly the same?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my big thing with fighting shojo or whatever
They're all
anime
the
for
same.
boys. Yeah, I
Every
mean like
anime for boys is the same. Some have nicer visuals. Some sometimes hit some deeper notes. Some get down the weeds a little bit more, but
But
like,
they're all gonna have a beach episode, maybe a mecha episode.
yeah,
Um, what else? The power up episode.
power episode. There's always a racing episode,
Yeah.
unless you turn it into the whole series like Initial D, which I have to
Which
say,
is
I
an interesting subversion there, even if it was self-aware.
there is, which is actually funny because I tried to watch Initial D, and it's like there's nothing wrong with the plot. There's nothing wrong with the plot, or even the characters. It's just that every episode is the same. It's literally every episode. It's like something happens. Something's not gonna happen. It's not gonna. He's not gonna show up. He's not gonna show up. He showed up. He won the race. Ah! And then next week, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Poignant vaporwave shots of early '90s Tokyo. Vaporwave shots of 1990s early, slightly outside Tokyo. And then it just goes, and then he won the race, defying the laws of physics. That's not how a car works. But we'll spew a lot of mumbo jumbo, so it's how you think a car works.
Also known as the Wachowskis' 2008 Speed Racer.
Oh, I know, and that's not to knock Initial D. I actually enjoy it. I just can't sit through it. It's a good concept.
That's a good point.
It's one of those things like you like, but it's like I've tasted enough of this to know I like it, but it's not something that I'm gonna be able to eat every day. It's liverwurst for me. It's liverwurst. Yeah, it's got a weird aftertaste, but yeah, I like it. But I don't want to eat it every day or every week. I'll have a little bit every once in a while.
And you just basically summed up for anyone who's wondering why I don't feel like I should invest time watching My Hero Academia. When I watch 8-year-old, not for 8-year-olds, but 8-year-old came out, anime like Steins Gate instead, basically. Even if it is pseudo-intellectual.
It is pseudo-intellectual, but here's the thing.
What, Steins Gate or anime in general?
Well, anything that involves science in popular television is usually pseudoscience-y.
Yeah, because but it could be entertaining like Doctor Who.
That's true. Doctor Who is entertaining. What was I gonna say?
You said that like most thing is in science fiction.
Oh, right. No, I was gonna say Steins Gate. At least they were trying. At least they were original with Steins Gate. Steins Gate was dang original.
I feel like they could have. I know this is kind of part of a rabbit trail, but I feel like they could have like better had to focus on like just information being sent to the past rather than bodies. But
potato. I mean, that's one thing. Because I think I really do enjoy the visual style of manga or manga or whatever we're supposed to call it. I don't know which. People can fight about that later. But I love the visual style of it. It's just I wish there were better stories in it.
Yeah.
It's like the visual style is great. It's a great visual style, but man, as a writer, I'm hard pressed to find real good stories or stories that'll keep me interested beyond the first 3 episodes. And to their credit, most of the ones that have kept me invested beyond 3 episodes aren't ones that do anything serious. They're
skipping ahead
comedies.
to manga, like yeah. I think that's why I'm not into manga as much, because like there's just so much of it and so much of it has an adaptation.
Yes.
And like I'd rather like, especially since it's like out of print or hard to get or non-translated, whereas like anime will be, it's like I can get through the anime faster. And sometimes the manga is like subpar, and like manga always feels to me like waiting for adaptation to it, because it seems like a lot of manga does. Anime does. I don't know if that's a culture thing or something else.
Sometimes that's just the goal of it, is to make it and then get the show for it.
Yeah, like almost like it's a show Bible in a way.
It is, because I'm thinking about, like, it depends on how closely you follow things. Like how I'm trying to think. Like,
especially now, because there's just so many studios now and so much wealth, and there's like so little censorship or like technology limits for making anime.
Right, there's so, but even then, it's weird because it's like an artistic warehouse because you're just
Yeah.
trying, because you got, okay, we have all these content, and now we have to have a team of people to make it happen, and it's got to keep happening.
And also, I think on like a slightly unrelated level, I think that's why like modern day Korean live action films rather than modern day live action Japanese films, because like nobody wants to work in a limited genre anymore, especially one that's so expensive. But for a very similar and wealthy country like South Korea, they're going to have like doesn't have much of an animation industry. They're still going to care and going to put forth the effort to make at least high concept films that are interesting, even if they're pseudo intellectual.
I'm not gonna lie, all of that literally went over my head by about 3 feet, but
But
sure!
let's look at this another way. A lot of Japanese population is very isolated now, and there's like a population crisis. So there's going to be a lot more men who go home for their free time or do more traditional ways of reading manga on a train or in a cafe or internet cafe. So, and when you have more isolation, like you're gonna like go to less sociable content. I mean, like to be made because like in a live action film, you need all these people to get it made, and like a manga, you can make yourself, and an anime, you could also theoretically make yourself. It's also like something,
Okay, okay, I think I get what you're saying. Okay, so you're
yeah,
saying that, like, so you're saying as you have a population, so basically you're saying is as you have a population in decline and you have a place where social mores are shifting away from being
yeah,
together.
and that's why you kind of see the more inappropriate stuff even in. I mean, it's happening in the West as well as you know, and I
No,
talked
that's
about this actually
true.
in my postmodernism video. That you kind of see even like in the because there's also no rating system for I mean for Japanese television there is, but as more goes to the internet, like you kind of see like more mature elements in like places you don't think it ought to be. Like it
Life is
almost seems
rated
off
TV
topic.
MA.
And yeah, well, this is how people sum up in the word fan service.
Whew. Yeah, no, fans. Yeah, no. So,
And that's another reason, go back to the original thesis, that's another reason why I think manga and anime suffers, because like with that
same
established
plot.
tradition and the way that their civilization is going, it's like it creeps in there and it kind of like interrupts the story. Especially when you have the whole concept, like another concept is filler episodes where you could just like
Filler episodes. Oh my word! Like, there are some where it's just like, so are we ever getting back to the main plot, or we just those like more and more powerful villains always appear and always lose. Just like, oh look, the hero. Oh, the hero's dead. Oh, the hero's bleeding. Oh, they're up again. Oh, they're staggering forward. Oh, the bad guy's doomed. Oh, there we go. There was a spiritual attack. Oh, he's dead. Oh, look at that. Oh, what a shame. Man, I can't wait for the next season.
I think another thing that makes things really really hard to get into is that sometimes like manga and anime actually improve like the story as it goes on. Like go
Yeah,
back to Steins Gate. It's either part two is like interesting time travel thriller, like not Inception, like Interstellar or Primer. But part one is like happy time travel time with gay Asians.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm only up to episode 9. If anyone on the audience
okay. Well, no, I was thinking about like I do agree with plot getting better as seasons go. That's a pretty often, at least for me, that's something that I noticed
and to
happening.
be perfectly bipartisan, like I think that's also kind of the thing of like if you do it right, that's kind of like getting your characterization out of the way and your characters introduced and explained so you can take them places.
That's true. Are there like of shows that have endured like at least for a significant period? How many of them was how many of them was their first season actually their best season?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I can't think of too many. I mean, like there's like there have been some really good manga slash whatever slash animes that have held my attention. Some that are really good, some that are kind of inaccessible. Um, Matt, as you know, I do have a long and passionate watching history with Sergeant Frog.
Yes, I still don't understand that, but you do you.
It's his. It's fun. I have no idea why you hate that show,
I don't
but
think I hate it. I just don't. I need to watch more of it. Question mark.
yes, no. So I mean that was good. I mean obviously, I mean everybody kind of does at some point need to watch Death Note, if even not for the story, for the memes. Yes it is kind of a hardcore edgelord show, but
And
it's all
don't watch.
right.
And you don't watch the crappy Netflix
Don't watch the Netflix
adaptation.
version. It's a pretty decent show. It does lag a little towards the end. It starts to lag and go off the rails a little bit at the end, but it does pretty good with suspense. I would like it. I'd throw out there if you're looking for classics. It does suffer a little bit of the same episode syndrome, but
Yeah.
at least Inuyasha did some really different things, and
Yeah.
and for an older anime, it really is beautiful. It is beautifully done,
Because
and
it's 2006, actually, I think, right? Which is considered one of the best years in manga anime history.
it started in the '90s. Inuyasha did.
Oh, I thought you meant Death Note. I thought you were talking about
Oh
Death
no,
Note.
Death Note was pretty good. I liked romantic comedy. I liked Fruits Basket. Fruits Basket was cute and it was funny, and I was kind of invested in it up until they stopped showing it on Netflix,
No.
which was they cut me off 2 episodes from the end. I still don't know how that series ends, and it's driving me crazy.
Oh.
And I can't see it, and I don't
And
have
you
the
don't
heart.
like going to virus sites that
I
like.
don't have the heart to pirate it. I don't have the heart to pirate it. And then
Well, you should go on Kiss Anime for all your weeaboo needs.
yeah, oh, know what else was actually a pretty good show?
What?
I liked Ghost Hunt. Not Ghost Hunt. I'm sorry. Ghost Hunt is a meme. Ghost Hunt. No, that's Ghost Stories. Ghost Stories is a meme. Don't watch the Japanese or only watch the English dub because it is just one entire running joke of how bad the show is. Like it's like they just threw out the script and the actors they're out. They're just off doing their own thing. But Ghost
So
Hunt,
it's kind of like a YouTube abridged series,
yes.
only maybe less inappropriate.
No, more inappropriate. It's a YouTube
Oh,
abridged series, except it's done by the actual studio,
oh
which is
wow.
hysterical. But Ghost Hunt's actually good. Ghost Hunt is it. I don't know if there was. I think I heard that there was 3 seasons. Only the first got released in America, I believe. I think as far as I can remember, but that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
That's got a very much Japanese X Files vibe.
Hmm.
That's good. That's a good show. I like that show. Other than
Uh,
that, Durarara is fun. It's fun. It's wacky.
oh, is
It's
that the one about the motorcycle? It's not. It's not like Initial D, right? It's not racing.
not at all.
Okay.
It's about a lot of things. Come to think of it, that's a fun show. If you don't think about it too much, it's a fun show. It's ridiculous. It involves ancient prophecies, motorcycle racing, mob doctors, organized crime, ancient curses, gang warfare, black Russian sushi chefs. It's fantastic. It's a level. It's a oh my word. In case anybody's following playoff baseball, St. Louis is actually doing a thing. They have a pulse.
Okay, we'll get to baseball later in questions.
Yes, but
Uh,
I can just think of so many series that I watched the first 5 episodes and just said, well, this ain't worth my time.
yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm sorry. We skipped to manga was supposed to be the ending of
No,
this
it's fine.
conversation.
Those sounds like great recommendations, and I think that's kind of connected to what we're saying because a lot of the times they're similar to the manga, and anime are just straight up adaptation. So I just know what you're saying, and who knows? Maybe I'll check those things out after I'm done with Happy Time Travel Time with Gay Asians.
I've never heard. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing something, but I've never heard of there being a gay subplot in Steins Gate. I don't know. I haven't actually watched it.
I'll have you figure out for yourself. But
Okay.
yeah, it's not. I don't know. I don't know if there's a Japanese concept for woke, or it's more. It seems like that more that like supposed to be tongue in cheek or comedic, but I
So
don't know,
so
for a gay
seriously,
character, for the main character being gay, I didn't really think it was in your face, and I'll just leave it at that.
okay, I didn't actually know that.
He might have been more bisexual, but it's debatable.
Interesting.
He insults his lab partner a lot, who's female. I
Interesting.
mean, yeah,
I mean I have no idea. Like I said, I haven't seen it. I just know what it's about. It's one of those things.
fair. But to get back to the topic, I think what we're getting here at is kind of funny for like limited series. How like
Hmm.
it's good to with certain concepts you want a limited series, but a lot of times that these shows hit their stride on the second season, and like how it's funny how like certain series, whether it be comics or manga, like is this tension between getting it right the first time and having only stretching a concept out for so long before it gets stale.
This is true. Like that sort of thing. It's like, how do you know when to say goodbye?
Especially when it's a manga adaptation. Like for the West, like we have the comic series The Walking Dead, and its continuing show is like literally adapting as it writes. Even though I'm sure it diverges, but
Uh,
like
Same goes for Game of Thrones.
yeah,
Like I know it's not a comic. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is a comic, but that comic is not the main point.
yeah, yeah. But I wrote down in my notes that like it's kind of funny that Akira, like
Yeah.
the manga that got turned into the 1988 film, that's like a two-part volume set for the full story. And I, from what I understand, that's like better than like the movie. And it wasn't even completed by the time the movie came out. Like it's kind of funny how that works. Like it's almost like a really hard job. I think that's another reason why anime and manga like don't tend to be very artistic, is because
Yes.
like what I just said.
Well, some are very artistic, but you're right. Why? I think you say it as in like why so many of them are cookie cutter sameish.
Um, I don't know. Do you? I mean, you think that, right?
I think in in America, not in America. I don't even want to say this. In Western, here's the difference. In Western literature, we communicate by tropes, but we're always trying to reinvent them. In manga, there is a trope, there is a trope, there is a trope, there is a trope. You have your established tropes, you will stick with them. Everything is an Agatha Christie. We're gonna take the same set of stock characters and we're just gonna put them into different scenarios. And there are times that she would break away from that, and those would stand out. Or there would be times when she would do that and twist those characters until they became something else. I would say that's exactly what she did in And Then There Were None. Was that sort of thing? You took stock characters and then twisted them until they were something else. Or you had ones like her Harley Quinn books, nothing to do with the Joker Harley Quinn, which is just that's a flaming train wreck. Her Harley Quinn detective books, which are actually of real quality. You should read them. They're short stories. They're very lovely. They're very lovely. They're odd for Agatha Christie, and they're beautiful. They're very. I think she only ever wrote 6 or 7 of them, but they're very special. They're very special little books because it shows a very different side to Agatha Christie as a writer. So
Interesting.
so yeah, no. So you can, but there's so many tropes. It's after a while you get worn out by them.
But I think to have like a less pessimistic angle, I think the
Hmm.
reason why I think so, I another reason I don't get into manga or in general is just because most fiction in general, West or East, is not good. Like not bad, but like average, because an average has to exist for it to be average.
Is this sort of the all art is good but not all art is great?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
like I also add to that like social ignorance of like the culture of Japan, because like obviously a French
It's
novel is
true.
going to be more relatable because it's ultimately a Western novel. And Japan is literally the way it is because it was so isolated as a culture. Not to mention that as of recently, as in the last less than 100 years, which for them is like a blink, it was became fascist, and then they got bombed, and then it became Americanized, and they kind of got de-Americanized, and they had like a recession, and then this and that. So there's a lot of cultural baggage and homework that you have to kind of do,
That's
not because of no fault of the authors, but like, and then having to go through systems that like stuff is untranslated. You don't know what stuff's the best, what's just like nerdy
that's
trivia
true.
stuff.
No, no, that's fair. Because how well, you're right. That is the thing. How well is it going to translate? How well the it's not a matter of the language. It's a matter of the attitudes. It's a matter of the attitudes and motivations translating.
Yeah, I mean, I think emotions are universal, but you
Yes,
might not know that anime eyes are big because in Asian society or Japanese society, um, mouths are less emotional indicators than eyes, and this is where the tradition is believed to come from.
interesting. I
So
didn't
you
know
might
that.
you actually might lose information because you don't know about certain cultural norms, even if they are universal. They're just being displayed in a different way.
Interesting. The more you
So
know.
yeah, there's a great series called Why Anime by Channel Frederator by their sub channel Get in the Robot that kind of discusses anime tropes very well, I think.
Interesting.
So, for one last stint on this subtopic, do you have a favorite manga or what?
Favorite one has got to be favorite one that I ever did, as I liked it so much that I did a term paper about it for Asian Lit. I did it. It's
Yeah, that's Asian lit, all right, baby.
no, the author's name is escaping me right now. I can't
That's
remember his
fine.
name, but this is interesting because it started out as a novel. It was
Hmm.
written as a novel. It became a manga and then became an anime
Pretty
series.
brave of the author.
Yeah, I think some people who know would already know that I'm talking about another.
Hmm.
Um, um, Another. It's a.
Oh.
It's a very confusing. It's a confusing gothic horror novel that doesn't make sense the first time you read it. The second time you read it, it makes sense.
Now you want me to read it. Now you want
Yes.
me to read it twice, honestly.
Yes. No, I actually wrote about it because I think it's very interesting because it deals with both because um, it has both Western and Eastern spiritual baggage in how the antagonist, which is not the antagonist, is interesting because it has some very it has some very hardcore Western cosmic horror vibes, but it's also very distinctly Eastern flavored.
All I remember is like, oh, the universe wants to punish you, so it created a ghost for someone who didn't exist or something. I know that's a total mangling of it, but that's all I remember.
That is a complete mangling of it, but you're not entirely wrong, but you're like 95% wrong. It's a very good book. It's about a high school class. It's about a high school class, and that class, it's not it's the I'll say this much. There's always one high school class that has one too many people in the class, and that
I
class is
remember that part.
cursed. And it's interesting because, like, for a novel, it's like, oh, it's about high school. It's scary about high schoolers. It's not like that. Like
No, I mean, like,
you know your expectation when you think scary with high schoolers. It does not fulfill those expectations. It's very interesting. It deals with a lot of psychological horror. Most of the horror is psychological.
yeah, it's not really like jump scare or gore.
No,
No.
I don't think there's a single jump. There's not, at least in the manga. There's no jump scares at all. It's all just it's sort of just this creeping. It's this creeping dread. It's what a tree feels in November, up until the end. It's it's a good book. It was actually the author actually wrote that they thought that the story had improved when they transitioned it from a novel to a manga.
Hmm.
So I cannot speak. I know actually, which is a little bit odd because all three adaptations of it have been critically acclaimed. So
Hmm.
I have not seen
Interesting.
this television show.
Well, I'm glad you had a big thing for yours because for mine, all I wrote down is that there's a really good J.G. Keeley recommendation. Well, actually, I gravitated because it was the only manga edit recommendation on his comics
Yes.
recommendations, and it was the. It's actually a series, so it's like multiple volumes called Lone Wolf and Cub by the artist Kazuo Koyuke, and it's like set in medieval Japan about a father and a son. I think got like a live action film adaptation.
Mm.
But I just feel it's funny that like out of all the manga, like for whatever reason, I don't know how JG found out about it. Like he
Mm-hmm.
recommended like that one, and I think it's fairly old too. I want to say like 1990s or something.
Okay. Okay. There's some good. I think the manga from the '90s is probably gonna be a little bit better than the anime from the '90s, but
Yeah. Yes. Full of less spiky hair because it's set in the medieval period.
hey, amen to that.
So I got a little bit of notes about Western comics here.
Yeah, no, we should actually probably talk about that because time's getting on.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I don't know, do you want to speak real quickly if you have a favorite comic books, franchise, strip, whatever?
As for like comic books, as in like
Mhm.
if we're talking comic books, like what people have action figures
Very
of,
broadly, because this could also include like Calvin Hobbes, Garfield, that kind of thing.
I never got into American comics,
Really?
as in like Batman, Robin.
That's understandable.
Why did I almost call? I almost called Super. Uh, for some reason, I don't know why I can't say Superman right now. Every time I start to say I want to say Subaru. And yes, my favorite Subaru man. He's my favorite super. I never got into those really at all. I can't think of what. I remember there was a comic book of The Hobbit that I used to read a lot. I don't. That's all I really remember of
Yeah, I
Western
remember that.
comics.
We probably read the same copy too,
I
because I know
think we
what
did
you're
with the
talking
same
about.
copy, but it's the one in the kitchen bookshelf.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one.
But of the Western comic strips, I think you'd have a hard time ever competing with Peanuts. I think. So no, Peanut. I think you have a very hard time competing with Peanut. I think Peanuts was for what it was and for what it is. I think what Peanuts was and what Peanuts is are two very different things. Because what Peanuts is now, Peanuts is a commercial force. Peanuts, what Peanuts
Yeah,
is, did not
I mean,
exist in. Yeah,
like looking now, like just like the people from MetLife. I mean, the mascots and like a lot of, I think like the character rights is a lot owned by Hallmark because I see them
Dorney
on the
Park.
cards all the time.
Dorney Park.
Dirty Park, yeah, too. It's like where did it? Why did they get sold to these people? I mean, it just seems random. I'm not disagreeing with it. It just seems random.
I don't want to use the phrase that I want to use about what's happened to the characters, but
Well, the word that comes to my mind is kind of corporatist, but you know, again, it's just like
corporatist is not the word that's coming to my mind. But
okay.
so the what peanut and that peanuts like that did not really exist until the 1990s. I'm gonna throw that out there towards sort of the twilight of Charles Schultz's career, but from I'd argue from the 60s through the 80s, you had one of the most depressed, sharp, cutting edge comics that could be written at the time. That was
So
like
you think that he actually hit his stride in this time? Because most people think, oh, it's like the '60s when the first he got really famous with like the first TV specials and stuff.
well, yeah, the TV specials were wonderful, but 60s through like the 60s through the 80s and the 60s through the 80s, Peanuts was dark, it was sharp, it was mean, it was they threw around a lot of big scary things, and they could get away with it because they used kids, and
And it actually, I remember, I kind of read some of those stuff. Like, I have like the big black hardcover collections that
yep,
cost like $1 million at Barnes and Noble,
oh yeah,
and like it was almost kind of like, I don't know, like maybe he was just close with his kids, but like it actually seems like it could come from like someone of their age.
Yes, it was
It was filtered through them, which I don't see through a lot of great children's
true.
literature, and it brought a sense.
You
I
can
really would love to capture some of that if I ever did children's literature, but I don't think I could.
exactly. It is literally something that you can read and appreciate no matter how old you are. Because you're always gonna be able to look at a strip and say, I know what that feels like.
Yeah,
It's such an interesting dichotomy, and I'm also gonna throw out there, um, Calvin and Hobbes. I think succeeded with that, with the sort of the yes it's kind of mostly for adults, but it's still filtered through a child's eyes.
and it's not necessarily like something like the way that they're living, like they're living in an adult's world, or it's like a story of lost innocence. It's like the way that they think and interact, but understanding things on a
Yeah,
basic level. It's not easy to write.
it's not easy to write. So I'm a big fan of those two. Even
Okay.
though I think it gets way too far up its own butt sometimes. I think House Pets by Rick Griffin. It's a web comic. It's been running for a lot of years. He's kept it fresh.
That's kind of why it's hard because it's just so much material. It's hard to keep like consistent themes. Probably since it was his first work and he was just
Yeah,
figuring himself out until he started, hey, let's make this about something. And I don't know.
yeah. It's one of those things
I
where it's
can see
like,
myself doing that, so I'm not
yeah,
like, oh, that's
yeah. No, House Pets by Rick Griffin is pretty good. If I'm not in the mood to think and I'm just in the mood to just like giggle at like I will from time to time I will read Foxtrot. I'll read Foxtrot or The Far Side when I'm not really in the mood to like think about things.
fair.
Once I got older, I started to actually think Dilbert was funny because I finally got Dilbert after I got a job. After I
That was
got
one
a
of like the
job,
late '90s, early 2000s cartoon adaptation. You should probably check out.
I should look at that. I should look at that. But like,
The manga is usually better though.
yeah. So those ones. So like, I have nothing too terribly outlandish when it comes to reading comics. I don't think. Yeah, no. I think that's the extent of mine. That's the extent of my American comic bookness.
Hmm, fair.
So how about for you on that flip side of that question?
Um, I have a lot written, but I think you can sum up pretty well. Let me sum up.
Sure.
Princess Bride.
Yes. There's too much. Let me sum up.
So yeah, I think one of my biggest um, modern day things to be attracted to comics, other than the fact that J.J. Keeley has a lot of great things, that I think just as a filmmaker and as a writer of fiction, it would just be healthy for me because the Wachowskis, Robert Rodriguez, Alejandro Jodorowsky, were all involved in comics before they were involved in film. And it definitely was like, sort of, for lack of a better word, a mind expanding drug. You watch their films, and it's like nothing else. Um,
Mhm.
and you got the sense that they got to think about like where things are at and organize their brain well, which is another thing that probably most people don't think of something that filmmakers do. Um, Not only just read their stuff, but to read comics in general. So um, I'm not into superhero film. I am into actually more into superhero films than comics, because we're comics.
Uh huh.
And I think the reason is because like they were birthed in either the golden age or the silver age. And for people who don't know, that's like the mid '50s to the early '70s,
Uh huh.
and that's like when it did do stuff to the comic community. Like it made the industry more auteur focused, pumped a lot of money into the comics industry, and of course, they inspired the next generation of artists and authors to do the same. You know, mostly baby boomers and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, it's a very pulp dominated era,
Mhm.
and it also got to be depulped through underground comics with people like Robert Crumb and Gilbert Shelton. But as comics got darker and less censored, really, even though the Comics Code Authority was still there, and the people found a way to subvert that with underground comics, which were like self-distributed, or Mad Magazine, which became a magazine by like not using glossy paper or something, or using glossy paper.
Uh huh.
So as this goes on, there's a kid in England who reads all this and gets interested in this, and his name is Alan Moore, and he creates a lot of great stuff. Like he's a guy who did V for Vendetta, Watchmen, which I think everyone who's interested in fiction should read, and of course
Mm.
Swamp Thing, which is my favorite, which again is the top of Keeley's recommendation list. Um, it's I don't know if you heard it or not. Recently had a TV show that get canceled for it.
I think I heard of it. I think I heard about that specifically.
Yeah, for Watchmen and V for Vendetta, they're kind of like I don't really fully understand them, but they're very political, and I don't fully agree with them. They're not insufferable. Um, Series they are on the left. I don't know where exactly Alan Moore's political compass is. He claims to be an anarchist, but honestly, I think he kind of creates a case for V for Vendetta that anarchism like kind of isn't possible as much as it just kind of trust busts the state and creates a new state than like no
Yeah,
state at
no,
all. But
and thus is the inherent problem with anarchy,
yeah,
because anarchy cannot behave, cannot beget anarchy, cannot beget anarchy.
which is actually kind of what my film actually talks about. How
Yeah,
like entities that try not to be a state, they run like a state, become a state eventually, essentially.
people cannot not have structure in their life. Even if it is destroyed, we will implement it again because we must.
Yeah, so I'm not knocking V for Vendetta or Watchmen. In fact, I'd actually say that V for Vendetta is probably something that's strongly inspired the movie I'm currently writing. Probably the one movie adaptation I'd strongly compare my film to, even though it's not really like that. But favorite is Swamp Thing, and just briefly so going through it, it's deal with environmental issues without being preachy or kind of like anti-human, like a lot of Studio Ghibli films are, which is very refreshing.
That's true. That is one thing about Studio Ghibli. As beautiful as their art is, as great as a lot of their movies are, man, are they preachy as crap sometimes.
Which is the reason why I like Spirited Away because it's kind of like more
It's
show than
not.
tell.
It is not. It is not preachy at all, which is why I think it's their best one.
Like here's an example within the universe. So one of Swamp Thing's enemies is Woodrow or Floronic Man, and in the film he tries. In the first, at least for the collection I read, the one of the fifth, there's a character arc that like he tries to take over the Earth using plants to kill all mammals in what he calls the Revenge of the Grass. And however, Swamp Thing's kind of like unceremoniously and unclimatically, yeah,
Yes.
revenge against Weed Killer. Revenge of the Grass. Kind of unceremoniously and unclimatically, Swamp Thing goes up to him and asks him who would change the oxygen into gases that plants need when all the animals and men are dead. And basically, Woodrow, who's connected to this kind of new agey plant hive mind, gets like rejected by the hive mind and basically withers away. And I think that's just a really good balanced theme
Huh.
about like the environment because it sends a message to both humans and plants while they're alive about the environment, how just this idea of balance that even though Alan Moore is coming from more of a neo-pagan background because he claims to be a neo-pagan, it's kind of an interesting
He claims a lot of
meta-modernist.
things.
Yeah, interesting bloke.
Though, if you think about it, what ultimately is more meta modernist than neo paganism?
Yeah, or neo-romanticism, neo-paganism, but yeah, kind of connected ideas, but yeah.
Mm.
It's a good point, but it's this idea of balance, I think, in nature that's attracted to me. And I think, lastly, there's something really great about his art. It needs to transcend the otherwise ugly 80s Bronze Age comic style. Maybe because he's British, maybe because he worked in DC rather than Marvel. I don't know, but I like
80s
how he goes
comics
about
are
things.
ugly. 80s
Yeah.
comics are ugly. Look, it's totally not Duke Nukem.
Yeah. Thanks, Judge Dredd.
I think excuse me, I think you mean lawful neutral Duke Nukem.
Oh gosh.
Somebody's not gonna be happy. Somebody's not gonna think that's funny.
Oh well.
Well, can't please everybody. So, have we moved on to our questions portion of the
I
evening?
believe so.
All right. Do you want to
You
go
go
first?
Oh yeah.
Sure thing.
So, personality type and interest wise, what would you say is the intended audience for your fiction? Like, what's another franchise or work they might come from?
Oh. Ouch. Jeez, Matt. Okay, that's a tough one. What work would they be coming from? What work would they be coming? I prefer that they'd be coming from the classics. They'd be coming from
Oh,
a classic mindset.
that's kind of highbrow, but it's not impossible. I mean,
Yeah,
like if you want to like come from someone who likes appreciates ideas and ideas of the past, which is something that not everyone thinks like anymore.
I want somebody to come from it who has a background in reading fiction at multiple levels. So like
Hmm.
I don't necessarily want somebody to come at it from I don't want somebody to come at it from necessarily a straight pulp background, though I think it could be refreshing for them too. Because
Hmm.
the goal is, yes, I want this to be exciting, but yes, this needs to be read at multiple levels. So
Accessible to some degree,
yes,
which everything has to be.
so I don't want I want to make it as accessible as possible, but I do want it to have a little bit more from people who are used to reading more literary things.
Okay.
I I um I don't know. The project I'm working on right now, some good books that I think would be kind of nice to come from. I don't know. I would say it has. I don't know. For when I think of the emotional fingerprint it has, I don't want to say Remains of the Day because the two books are nothing alike, but the same sort of color that Remains of the Day has.
Oh.
The same sort of color is sort of what I'm going for. That's a fantastic book. In case nobody's ever read the book Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro,
Hmm.
um, who is a British author. I mean, despite the fact that he emigrated from Japan, or I don't even I'm not sure he immigrated from Japan. I know his
I think he's the guy who
family is
did.
Japanese.
He's the guy who did the novel Never Let Me Go.
Yes,
Oh,
same
wow.
guy.
Oh,
At least I believe it's the wait. Never Let Me Go.
yes.
I think it's the same guy.
Okay. Well, we can
We
deal
can
with that later.
yeah we can double check that later. Um, but so yes, that would be so for you.
Hmm.
What is a comic book or a manga or whatever um, that you would most want to turn into a movie?
Hmm. Oh, that's a good one. Maybe I don't know. Like I haven't really been enough in the series. Like if I had all the money in the world, there's a really great thing called Shaolin Cowboy that kind of like appeals to me. Like it kind of reminded me of the old '70s show Kung Fu about the Chinese master living in the old West.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. No, not like that, but yes.
I think it might have actually been started by the Wachowskis, or at least the guest wrote for it. But it's about like some kind of Shaolin monk who's Chinese who goes to like the 19th century West and like fights something like demons.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. It would
Okay.
make an interesting animated film. I don't know if I could do it in live action. Definitely, I heard it was more weird than it was deep, but it was definitely interesting. I would definitely want to try it.
More weird than deep. Know what's a comic series I'd really like to read just now that you mentioned deep?
What?
I wanted to read The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck by Don
I heard
Rosen.
that's actually really underrated.
I've heard that's amazing, and I really want to
Yeah.
read. The soundtrack. The guy who writes the music for Nightwish did a soundtrack for that. He did a
Oh.
soundtrack for a comic book. What even is this?
By Disney
I
about
know,
anthropomorphic ducks.
I know, and it's a great soundtrack. It's a crying soundtrack, but it's a.
Wow.
I've heard that. I've heard
By
that's a.
Nightwish.
Yeah, no, I've heard that's a really good comic series. Um,
Hmm.
oh, as for your second question for me.
Oh, can you do yours first? Because mine's kind of long.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so um, my second question is, so you're going to school for computer programming.
Yeah.
In what way has that influenced your writing or your thinking about writing fiction?
It gave me more of a way of writing Ravi Singh,
Okay.
specifically in my first film because I know more coders and what they're like.
Hmm.
Um, like I'm just thinking of specific friends who are and are not like them. Like there's a weird like just there's certain things that you like wouldn't know. It's like I don't know, like just coder things, and sometimes it's hard because like you have to kind of combine people together and kind of create a theoretical person that could exist, which of course is the art of creating characters. Like
Hmm.
a lot of my coder friends like Rubik's cubes, and a lot of my coder friends like are very knowledgeable of a specific set of issues.
Hmm.
So it's been that, and as in a more general sense, like having organizing my mind in a certain way. I think it's organized my mind. I think to chunk things better, and I feel just like being in a schedule helps me
Yeah.
in general. Like Gabrielle's talked about this before, how she's a better writer during, or just a better problem solver during school.
Yeah. Your mind's a muscle. It's not,
Yeah,
but your mind, you have to exercise it.
it's an organ, but yeah, it's a
It's,
muscle.
yeah.
So your question?
Okay. I do I need to take notes?
Do you know what it is?
Um,
You
I
saw?
I kind of try not to look at the questions because I try to
Okay.
keep them spontaneous. I glanced at it, like I have a vague idea of what it's about, but
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
you don't have to know much about it, but I'll try to sum it up. So we're in October now, and do you generally think that the whole concept of October/November baseball in the MLB is a good idea? So all things considered, so wearing out players, stretching out the season when baseball is already less popular as it has been, having to compete with NFL, college football, NHL, etc.
Um, I think this comes back to the idea of should we shorten the season? Um,
Well, for just for a prerequisite,
okay,
I don't think October or November baseball has been a thing for very long, has it?
October baseball has been a thing for quite a while. October
But
baseball is,
November baseball, that's pretty.
November baseball is very rare. The only time I can really think of it happening was after 9/11, which is
2009 series, the World Series went into.
oh
So
no,
I'm
you're
counting
right.
postseason,
You're
by the
right.
way.
You're right. I know you're counting postseason. You have to.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not opposed to October baseball. They've been
Or
trying to have it early. November baseball. November baseball. I think is as much as I love baseball, it is too long. November
that's
is
just
not
greed,
baseball
base.
weather.
That's just greed to you, right? Or bad
No, it's
planning.
if it goes into November, it exists for the either. Well, I mean, if it exists for 9/11, there's nothing you can do about it. For 2009, that was a little bit of a weird season, but hey, it is what it is.
Okay.
Um, in general, I don't like November baseball because I think that if you're stretching out the season further and further, you're doing it for the exact same reason that we have a wild card game. We have an extra wild card game because you want to sell more tickets. But here's the thing: the good news for baseball is that yes, attendance was down again this year. But here's the thing: TV TV viewing was up. TV viewing was up significantly, and
Because you also have fall television and as well as like NHL and NFL.
yeah,
Because I think NHL, because NHL basically starts in October, so like the
and NHL has already started.
and the season is so fresh enough to like watch more games and not be like, oh, they're hopeless at this point. Let's just watch something else.
Yeah, and I will say,
So fall TV plus like every
yeah,
league is still in its prime.
yes, that's true. And the NFL has not been super exciting this year.
No, it's been Patriots, except for the Eagles basically a year ago.
Football's been very boring this year, and so I just kind of throw out there no to November baseball, yes to October baseball. I think if people were talking about taking the season back to what it was in the middle of the 1900s to the 154 game season, I'm not necessarily opposed to that.
Okay.
I'm okay with an 154 game season. Have it start a little later. Basically, have the season start a week into April and have it finish up right before October and start October with the playoffs. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. We can avoid
Okay.
snowouts in Colorado. But in general, people say the baseball season's too long. No, it's really not. Our attention span has just gotten shorter. It's like people say we should. It's also these are also the same people who say we should get rid of the NFL preseason and add in 2 more regular season games. Why? It's one of those why things. So
I know. I
no,
think with football, like the kind of like the rarity, the sort of like planned rarity of it all is
the
kind of like
planned rarity. Yeah.
you can't get it with baseball because like I think because you score much. I think the idea with baseball is because you score much less. You're giving more opportunity for players to do things
Yeah,
with the more games you have.
it's just like you can't. I think that's why it's kind of we've seen like I think that's why kind of it's hard to catch on in the United States is the World Baseball tournament.
Yeah.
World Baseball Classic, that's what it's called. Because baseball doesn't work well in a tournament setup. It works best in long season. It's just where it
It's the
works.
reason why it happened where it did, because it like kind of by trial and error worked out best that way.
It worked
The
out
pitch
best
was
that
not
way.
broken.
Yeah, if it's not broken, don't fix it. It doesn't bother me. If it bothers somebody else, then I don't know. Football exists, or you could be one of the 5 people in the United States that watches Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
So I think this is where we're end tonight. Also, on a related sports note, how the NBA is handling Hong Kong is absolutely shameful. But we'll talk about that. That's a whole other can of worms to open.
Free the capitalist Asians.
Sic semper tyrannis. On that note, good night, everybody. We've been around the world, and it got weird. Good night now.